to today's video on developing for accessibility in Flutter. In this video, we'll learn about accessibility, why it's important to have in your application, and explore some key considerations and techniques to ensure that your Flutter application is accessible and inclusive for all users. So what is accessibility? Accessibility is the inclusive practice of ensuring that there are no barriers that prevent interaction with or access to websites or applications. Therefore, accessibility enables people of all abilities to perceive, understand, navigate, interact with, and contribute to the service or software. Accessibility is not a barrier to innovation. It will not force you to make a product that is ugly, boring, or cluttered. It will only introduce a set of constraints to incorporate as you design and develop your application. These constraints will give you new ideas to explore that will lead to better products for all your users. Accessibility should not be an afterthought. It might seem a bit inconvenient to ensure your application is accessible, but this should be a feature considered at the beginning of your development process. So why does accessibility in application development matter? About 15% of the world's population experience some form of accessibility needs. So when your application is accessible, you will not be excluding this population from your product or service. Deliberately locking out over 1 billion people from accessing your application will portray your brand in a negative light. Better user experience. Adding accessibility to your applications improves the overall user experience of your software to people with or without disabilities. Accessibility means that even in short-term scenarios such as bright light, your application will still be usable and functional. The decision to create accessible application will also have the added benefit in the form of a broader user base. From a business case, this could lead to more revenue for your application. Regulatory frameworks also require that software and other digital products are accessible. Otherwise, they may attract legal complications. So it's probably best to ensure your mobile application is accessible to avoid the risk of legal action. The Flutter framework has been designed to be accessible out of the box. So let's dive into some key considerations for accessibility in Flutter. First, let's talk about widget properties. As we mentioned, the Flutter framework has been designed to be accessible out of the box. This, however, is as long as you cover all the relevant properties within a widget. Look for and use the available properties within a widget that are related to semantics. For example, semantic labeling or exclusion from semantics. In the example on the right, we have an image widget where we are using the exclude from semantics property set to true. In this case, the screen reader will skip this widget since you might only be having it on your user interface for the visuals, but it's not important enough for the application's use. Useful images which do not contribute meaningful information to an application can be excluded from the semantics. Next, we have the semantics widget. The semantics widget plays a crucial role in providing descriptive labels and hints for your user interface elements. This allows screen readers and other assistive technologies to convey information to users with disabilities. By utilizing the semantics widget, you can set labels, hints, and other accessibility properties for your widgets, enhancing their overall accessibility of your application. In this code, we've wrapped our elevated button widget with the semantics widget. This simple addition can greatly enhance the accessibility of our button. Now, when a user interacts with the button, they will hear a spoken description provided by the semantics widget. As you can see, the label properties of the semantics widget sets the description label for the button. This label is read aloud by screen readers, providing users with valuable context about the button's purpose. By providing descriptive labels and hints, you are ensuring that the users of all abilities can navigate and interact with your application effectively. Color contrast is also another critical aspect of accessibility. To make your application accessible to users with low vision or color blindness, it's important to ensure sufficient color contrast. With the Flutter's theme data class, you can define a color scheme, and apply it consistently throughout your application. Remember to use tools like color contrast checkers to verify that your color choices meet accessibility standards. According to the Web Context Accessibility Guidelines 2.0, the contrast ratio between text and the text background should be at least 4.5 to 1. These guidelines help users with low vision, color blindness, or worsening vision to see and read text on your screen. For example, when we have a text that's about 25 pixels, the lightest gray that you can use on white background is the one shown on the screenshot on the right. We also have tap targets. Tap targets are touch targets that are part of the screen which respond to a user input and they extend beyond the visual bounds of an element. For users with motor impairments or users with larger thumbs, it is important to ensure that these tappable widgets or targets are big enough for the user to tap on them. The Material Design Guidelines and Apple Guidelines have these recommendations for minimum tap target size for users' comfort. For iOS, it is 44 by 44, while for Android, the target sizes are 48 by 48 dp. Support dynamic font scaling to accommodate users who require larger text. Use the Media Query class to access the device text scale factor and adjust your app's text sizes accordingly. This is useful for users who intentionally use larger fonts in their phones due to visual challenges related to smaller fonts. By dynamically sizing and adjusting the text size, we are enhancing the accessibility of your application for users who may have difficulty reading smaller text. To improve their readability, users might increase their system font size. Lastly, testing. As always, it is important to test your application to ensure it is accessible. Test your application accessibility using assistive technologies and screen readers such as TalkBack on Android or VoiceOver on iOS. Emulators might be a bit limited in this, therefore test with real devices to ensure the results are accurate. Both Android and iOS provide built-in accessibility tools that allow you to simulate different disabilities and evaluate your app's accessibility. Turn them on your device settings. Additionally, consider involving users with disabilities to test your application to give you valuable feedback and make necessary improvements. Write unit tests. Flutter tests include a method called meets guideline, which helps us to test these accessibility features such as contrast, labels, and tap targets. For contrast, if your application relies on certain color combination, write tests to ensure that this contrast between text and the background meet accessibility standards. For the labels, test that these widgets are labeled so that the screen reader can know what it does. For the tap targets, test whether these widgets are big enough for the users to tap on them, especially for users with motor impairments. That wraps up our video on developing for accessibility in Flutter. By following these considerations and techniques, you can create apps that are accessible to all users, making a positive impact on people's lives. Thank you for watching.